Hey everyone, today I want to share something a little different. My process for planning a painting and why skipping this step can lead to seriously overworking your art. You know that feeling when you really want to paint loosely and expressively, but the painting just gets away from you? You're trying to fix one thing and then suddenly you're repainting the whole canvas. It's so frustrating, and every painter I know has been there. And what I've learned is that 90% of the time this happens because the painting wasn't fully planned out before we started. So today I'm going to walk you through how I planned this painting step by step. I'll also show you the mock-up that I made for this portrait of Viktor from season 2 of Arcane. And I'll explain how I troubleshoot problems before I even pick up a brush. So if finding a reference and bridging the gap between that reference and the final painting has been tripping you up, or if you just suspect that you haven't been planning your paintings enough, or you find yourself painting by the seat of your pants and you think it's getting you in trouble, you're going to want to watch this video. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And I want to start by saying that planning a painting like this one, it starts before I even choose the subject. So, for example, I have been in a bit of a creative slump lately. And when that happens, what I do is I turn to my inspiration board. So this helps me to reconnect with the kind of art that excites me. But I don't just stop at looking. I analyze, I ask, what am I drawn to? Is it the colors, composition? Is there something about the mood? And this gives me a really clear direction to work toward. Now, the second tool that I like to use when I am in a bit of a rut or I'm feeling uninspired is to ask, what would be just plain fun to paint? In my case, it was fan art from an incredible TV show that I've been watching this month. So I endeavored to combine the two tools here. So I took a look at my inspiration board and I decided to make some fan art. So this began with me actually taking a look at all of the artwork that I have saved, because to me, this artwork represents the direction I want to take my own compositions. Now, I have made a number of videos on how to create a vision board like this and exactly what you're looking for. So if you are interested in learning more about this, I will go ahead and link that demo video where I walk you through everything you know to set this up for yourself up in the upper right-hand corner of this video. And I highly recommend that you check it out. But the basic idea of this board, before I go any further, is that I want this to represent my voice, my style. It's not just art that I like, it's meant to be representative of the exact direction I want to go or what my voice is. Once I put this together, and I'm not going to backtrack into what that process looked like since you can just go ahead and check out that previous video, but once this curated inspiration board was put together and it gave me this clear sense of direction, the next thing I really had to do was to understand what are the technical properties of these pieces that I'm really responding to. So I try to replace things like what is the mood or the emotion or the vibe of the piece, kind of more nebulous descriptors. And I try to replace these with like very concrete descriptors of what it is that I'm reacting to. So instead of just saying, the piece has an ethereal vibe, I might say, okay, most of these pieces feature very light tones in them. So there's a lot of white backgrounds, a lot of light grays. The backgrounds are very neutral. I would be tempted to describe them as airy, but the more concrete version of this description is to say that I'm keeping the paintings typically very high key. I'm also, in carrying this selection of artwork down, I'm really staying away from high chroma, super saturated, intense colors. Now, that isn't to say that there isn't a very strong sense of light in these pieces, but there's a difference between what I'm responding to in the light and what I'm responding to in the color. And then the final key element that I think is relevant for this planning session is that a lot of these pieces feature really abstracted backgrounds. So we're not going into any real detail or high realism when it comes to anything but the subject. The background is often very loose brushwork. So my next step here was to go ahead and select 3 different pieces that I think represented what I was excited to explore for this particular painting. So I'm going to start off by this piece by Henri Goudelin. What I loved about this was the idea of a face emerging from abstract brushwork. And a few other pieces I noticed really striked that same balance. So the next was from Juan Ramirez. I absolutely loved this portrait coming out of the raw brushwork of the underpainting. And then I have what's, I assume, a charcoal piece. Could be graphite, but I imagine this is charcoal. This is a John Rotherham piece. And same basic concept. I loved the idea that this started with just, a smattering of mark making, and then the portrait sort of resolved out of it. So right away, I already knew that I wanted to create a portrait along these lines. And so now I need to go ahead and combine this with the inspiration that I have had recently. And that is from the TV show Arcane, which, in case you haven't been watching, it is such an incredible show. The art in it is absolutely beautiful. The writing is superb. I think it is probably single-handedly the thing that propelled me to get back in front of the easel to actually make this painting that I'm sharing with you. So I started with this still from the show of the character Viktor. And one thing I'll say right away is this is definitely a bit more colorful than maybe what you could be used to seeing, or what I might be used to seeing on my inspiration board. But I thought to myself, you know what? This is a piece that I'm making for fun, for my own enjoyment. And what I'm noticing is that other than like the neck, this piece actually is pretty neutral. I have a lot of like just skin tones in the face. We have this glowing white hair, and then we have a pretty neutral dark background. So the next question was really to ask myself, which of the compositions I've been studying would work best with something like this? And immediately I went to this Juan Ramirez piece because the underpainting is so dark in this. And I thought to myself, if anyone has been watching the show, we know that, actually, like, spoilers just in case you haven't been watching, but if you haven't been watching, what are you doing? Like, pause this video and go watch Arcane. It's so great. But, we have Viktor in this kind of like astral projected environment where he is surrounded by this visual of like stars or nebulas in the background. And I thought that that could go really well with this darker underpainting. So here is what I went ahead and did for my next step. The first thing that I did was I decided, like, what does the size of a canvas I'm working on need to be? And I went ahead and cropped this image accordingly. So I already knew that I was going to paint on this 6x8 panel. So I went ahead and I cropped the dimensions of this particular reference to 6x8 so I could get a sense of like what can actually fit on the canvas. Now, the very next step that I took was that I had to put down some abstract brushwork. And I'm not going to lie, this is definitely something where like this could have gone wrong. It was certainly some experimentation. But what I went ahead and I did next was I went ahead and I actually put some of this brushwork down on the canvas. I took a picture of it and then I put it into Photoshop. And I pasted it into my 6x8 aspect ratio image here. And then I simply selected the image of Viktor and I superimposed it on top of this particular mock-up. And I made a few adjustments. So I went back and I actually edited some of the brush marks in here because I wasn't quite satisfied with the composition in my very first pass. But I went ahead and I made these adjustments just with this dark underpainting before I actually started painting the face whatsoever. And the result is that if you actually take a look at these images side by side, you will see that I stayed really faithful to my plan in my painting. And in my experience, this is what so many painters are genuinely missing. They're getting into trouble because they're going off of a reference that is just convenient. So maybe you have a great shot of your granddaughter that you took on your iPhone. And the background is terrible and she's not wearing a particularly cute outfit, but you're just like really taken by her expression. Or maybe the lighting isn't that good, but you just caught like the cheekiest pose, or it's capturing a really precious memory. The problem with this is that oftentimes we're overlooking key aspects of the composition that really embody what it is that we're reacting to as artists. So in my case, if I hadn't been paying attention to something like the lighting or the color or the pose, I'm going to have a really huge uphill battle in being able to really make the kind of painting that I want to make. Similarly, there's a logistical concern. So let's say, again, you're painting your grandkid. She's not in the best environment. Like, it's just not a very interesting background. And maybe she's not wearing a color of t-shirt that really complements the environment or that represents the kind of composition you want to make. And you just say to yourself, well, that's okay. I'll just paint a different background and I'll just change the color of her t-shirt. Or you look at your photo and you think, well, I really like what her face is doing, but I don't really like the background. I'll just figure it out at the canvas. The problem with this is that it just opens us up to so many unknowns when we're painting. We don't really know until we try, how is it going to look when we change the color of that shirt? Is it actually going to work well with the background? Or if we're not going to paint all the things that were in the background of our reference photo, what are we going to put there? And is it going to look visually appealing? So by going through a mock-up process in general, the idea is that we answer all of the questions like this before we even begin painting. This is exactly what I did for my recent OPA gold medal winning piece. By the way, I actually got my OPA gold medal in the mail this week. It actually has my name on it engraved and everything. I don't even have words still, over a month later, and I don't even know what to say about this honor, but this is just so incredibly cool. But I used the same exact process in making my OPA gold medal winning piece. I started with a reference that was really good, but I didn't want to just stop at a good reference. I wanted to actually mock up the final version. And so I took images of abstract brushwork that I had put down and I worked it into my mock-up until I could look at the mock-up of that painting, just like I'm looking at the mock-up of this painting now, and think, okay, I don't have any questions left. All I need to do is translate this image that we see in the mock-up onto this canvas. When we paint, we are juggling so many concerns. We are thinking about what brush to choose, what paint to mix up. Is this the right color? Is it the right value? Is it the right chroma or intensity? Am I putting it down on the right spot in the canvas? Am I creating the right shape with this mark? Am I controlling my edges of how this mark goes down so it relates to the other shapes of paint correctly? All of this just for one brush stroke. That is so much. You are juggling so many decisions every single moment that you're painting. The last thing we want is to pile on more decisions and have to ask ourselves, well, what if the background were different? Or what if I changed the way this is lit? What if I tried to put the face more into the light or create a stronger light and shadow pattern? it just opens you up to so much vulnerability. And I don't mean the good emotional kind of vulnerability. I entirely mean the vulnerability that you're going to really get yourself into trouble with this painting. So I hope that my walking you through this today really opens your eyes to just how much planning your favorite painters probably put into their favorite pieces and what this means for you and your painting practice. So if you've ever struggled with overworking your paintings, I want to encourage you to slow down and spend a little bit more time planning. It doesn't have to be elaborate. A quick mock-up or even just sketching out a color scheme can make all the difference. And if you want to see the final painting, stay tuned because I'm going to be sharing the finished piece in next week's video along with more insights from the painting process. In the meantime, if you find this kind of really tactical support helpful, if videos like this one that I have made have really helped you to solve problems that have come up time and time again in your painting practice and have held you back from painting the loose way that you would be really excited to work in, I would love to help you more. So comment down below that you're looking for help, and I will be happy to send you a link to reach out to talk with me one-on-one to see how we can actually take your painting to the next level and whether you and I working together to make that happen would be a fit for both of us. All right. Until next week's video, I hope this quick look has been really helpful. I hope it jolts you into a more effective planning regimen in your own painting process. I hope it spurs you to go watch Arcane if you haven't yet. And most of all, I hope it just gets you really inspired to paint and feeling really confident. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.